Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Indieheads podcast. I'm your host, Matty, a.k.a. at Monrovian Prince on Twitter. On this week's podcast, we have...
Jackson, at horse_jeans on Twitter. You might have formerly known me as at Jackson Codfish. The artist formerly known as Jackson Codfish is no more. Follow me at horsejeans. Yeah, happy to be here, folks.
That's how it is. I'm AJ at Ann Moser on Twitter. Quick shout out to neogaf.com. If you know, now it's gone. So rest in peace.
Hi, Josiah at Josiah on Twitter. There's some underscores and it's spelled weird, but I know you don't care.
Yeah, it'll all be in the description on YouTube. You can follow us. You can just click the links. Hold on, AJ. I know the Neo Jeff, like the owner, got accused of sexual assault or something like that. But did the forums like shut down, or is it just like people are migrating?
I'm pretty sure it's like gone now. Yeah, there was a legendary meltdown yesterday where all of these threads were just getting posted out of nowhere. That was like Nintendo is like just some weird shit happened there. I'm sure it's going to be well documented, but that's a dumpster fire of the internet that is now forever gone.
Rest in peace, but we don't give a shit about gamer Americans here on the Indieheads podcast. We care about music, not just music Americans, music everybody's. So let's talk about some music. We haven't done the podcast. Actually, we're kind of on time. It's been less than 2 weeks since the last one. That's pretty good in my opinion. That's a new record for us.
I got in the chat like after the last one, and I just said like. He's like, I can't wait till we wait a month before the next one. I'm like, no, I'm going to bully you guys into doing a new episode soon. And lo and behold, we have some albums to talk about that warrant a new episode. And we actually found time and got 4 whole-ass people to record.
Exactly. I promised that we'd have another episode out before October ends, and that's what we're doing. This is that, another episode. Cannot guarantee.
Do be like that.
Cannot guarantee whatsoever we'll have another one, but we will definitely have an episode in November. And then we will have some episodes in December and January. Well, you guys just have to wait and see what the future of the Indieheads podcast bestows. But let's get into the news real quick. We have a couple news items. Some little ditties. Some big ditties. First and foremost, we have a little ditty, kind of big ditty, depending on your ditty scale. But Pinegrove's new album, Skylight, has officially been mastered and will be released in March of 2018. And oh boy.
Lord help me.
Oh boy, this news was so much that Jackson got dropped from the call. He was so excited about Pinegrove, he could not contain himself, and so he had to leave the call. So
he had to go whack off.
Damn, shouts out to the boy.
He's going to go honk off.
We really tried it.
He's going to honk off on the freeway. But
looking at a skylight.
But anyways, yeah, Pinegrove. I'm excited about this. Of course, Cardinal.
Look, yeah,
Cardinal's
we're in the hive.
Cardinal's a damn classic, folks. It's a damn
I'll admit
classic.
I'm very late to the Pinegrove hive, but I'm very in the hive.
Exactly. That was
it's still kind of
me.
It's still kind of relatively early to be in the hive, though, just because comparatively how big Pinegrove's going to get, as we've said multiple times in this podcast before, they're on the cusp of being big hits, and so
big boys.
I don't know if it'll be like this album for sure, but it's exciting that it's like all new material, because Cardinal was there was some older stuff or stuff that had been kind of recorded before and released before on there. So to hear, an all new album of Pinegrove material, sign me up, baby. AOTY dropping in March.
In the past month or so, I've probably listened to their Tiny Desk 20 times just to hear that version of Need at the beginning.
Yeah.
Just because, I love their sound when Nandi's harmonies are added in and, just the slide guitar and everything coming together like that. And I really hope that her harmonies are prominent on this new album. But, color me hyped.
Also, Pitchfork, when you gonna release the full Pinegrove set? When is that going to happen? Because
the streets need it.
I need to see in high definition footage Evan from Pinegrove holding my stuffed cardinal and caressing it on his shoulder. I only have someone recording a screen of that happening. Like Pat or Kid Combo on Twitter did that for me. Shouts out to Pat real quick.
Beautiful boy.
Friend of the show.
Is he featured in the? Actually, we'll discuss our late night a bit later on in the podcast. But Pinegrove,
Well,
hell yeah,
what's
brother.
called? Were they playing any new stuff in the set? Because if so, that might be why it's not getting released. Like if they have stuff in their album, that could be why it's not getting put up.
I mean, well, it's two things. Yeah, they're playing new songs live already. But another thing is like just the process of getting an album out. It takes like, I mean, when they say
forever.
When they say it's March, it's like, oh yeah,
I think they're done.
Most likely they're done. It's been turned into the label, and then basically just waiting to get like pressed. Like
yeah, it's a whole weird thing where the album is generally done long before it comes out, unless you're Kanye and you put out The Life of Pablo, in which you don't even finish it and then put it out and then you finish it over like a 3-week process.
And it seems like they're gonna have a more elaborate marketing process for this one, at least like in the lead up.
Yeah, there's gonna be. I mean, they're gonna be Pinegrove.
To be huge.
Yeah,
It's gonna be
Pinegrove.
big.
Their hype slowly built up as the year went on, and this one is just. I mean, the hype is there. Like, it's just gonna be like, I know people on Indieheads are gonna be so fucking annoyed by seeing how many fucking Pinegrove things that are gonna be on the front page. Like the album, like, because they're on Run for Cover, and they quickly are now like possibly the biggest band on Run for Cover, at least the biggest active band. Because like, I mean, fucking Modern Baseball, they're basically done for at this point.
Yeah.
Like, they did some shows recently, but, like, they said, oh, these are our last shows for a while. Like, we're pretty much on hiatus, and that's it's kind of safe to say that they're done for a bit. So,
the big thing about Pinegrove is you literally cannot go to an indie rock show in the year 2017 without seeing, like, at least a dozen of those, like,
The Cardinal Dad hats?
Yeah, the Cardinal Dad hats.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, that is the new look.
And or them playing between sets.
Yeah, right.
That's also a big mood. I have one quick
If Homeboy come rocking in with the Pinegrove Dad hat, he gonna, like, break my... I don't know. Indie soft boys are...
Indie soft boys.
Indie soft boys, exactly. You take that for what you will.
Before we move on from the Pinegrove discussion, I have a take, which is I've been listening to Cardinal again recently. 1, it's good, brother. 2, Size of the Moon is that shit, and it's the one from that album, in my damn opinion.
That's a correct fact there, brother.
Correct.
All right.
I like Size of the Moon, but it's not my... It's
not the one that just like...
Phasey is the one. Phasey is the one that does it for me. Phasey is my...
Those
my
are
fuck
both...
me up.
Basically, yeah, the ideal fuck me ups.
But anyways, Jackson, I'm gonna let you take this one because you had some feelings about this one.
This is just so fantastic. In terms of 2017 is bad, just all around. But it's so weird that sometimes you just have some real good things happen. And this one was, I believe, so Fox News for some reason was having some sort of discussion about the nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And this year,
well, because there's absolutely nothing else relevant going on in the news that Fox News would need to talk about, you know?
Of course not. Exactly, yeah. They had some downtime. They're like, how about this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? So
how about these losers, you know?
Yeah, did fucking, like, Lena Dunham say anything today? No? Okay.
Radiohead is nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year for the first time, which they have previously stated that they don't give 2 fucks about getting in and probably wouldn't like go to the ceremony if they got in anyways, which is wonderful. But on top of that, so they were discussing the list and then they immediately all just started dunking on Radiohead and described their music as, quote, elaborate moaning and whining for ringtone sounds, and also described Radiohead fans as, quote, strange, malnourished, and sad. And the thing is... There's
a lot to unpack here.
There's a lot to unpack here. They're also not wrong.
Yeah, where's the lie?
Yeah,
Where is the lie?
Here's the thing. The part where they lost me here is for ringtone sounds, because that makes it sound like a 2006 ass take. But the rest of it is pretty on point.
Yeah.
I think they listened to the national anthem and were just like, this is disrespectful to the troops. I am not having it. Radiohead is canceled officially. That's the take.
I love any things that dunk on Radiohead because they're generally like very true. Even like even as one of 2 resident Radiohead stans of the chat, it's like, yeah, I am strange, I'm sad, not malnourished. So 2 for 3 there.
I'm very healthy, brother.
We out here eating. It's big boy season. You know what it is.
Radiohead, we stay eating.
Got that organic sadness, brother.
Jackson, he eats his vitamins and says his prayers, brother.
God damn it.
So,
this was really funny. I loved this a lot.
You can't dunk on Radiohead by being like, whoa, the music's really slow and it's really sad. And it's like, bitch, why do you think I like Radiohead?
Yeah, that's
sad
the
and
thing.
slow. Tom York is a weird motherfucker.
There was a really great bit in the new Patton Oswalt special that he does where there's like a dude he's like talking to people in the front row of the audience about what their job is, and there's a guy who like works in a construction site, but he's like one of the dudes in the trailer. He's like, so they're up there and they're fucking Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run, and you're Radiohead. You're like, woo, androids and depression. And it's just like, yeah, that is what Radiohead is. It's androids and depression and like strange moaning, and it makes me like relive like past experiences in my life and regret decisions that I've made, and it's great. It's really good stuff. Go listen to Radiohead, brother.
Yeah, it's always weird when Fox News is doing the dunking, because usually it's Fox News getting dunked on, or really just conservatives getting dunked on. So when it's the other way around, I mean, they have to really like hit some core, and they really hit the core here.
I mean, like this was a big get for them. Don't get me wrong. Like Johnny Greenwood updated his Twitter bio to say like, what was it? Sad.
It said strange, malnourished, and sad. Quote Fox News, and then it says spits 3 times.
It's days like today too that I miss Tom York on Twitter.com, because he would have just had the most like tangentially.
He still posts.
All he does. He just retweets politics articles that are sometimes a little questionably neoliberal and like make me kind of roll my eyes a little bit, but it's fine. Everything's fine.
Okay,
I think it's wonderful that Johnny Greenwood has seen the video of like Radiohead albums described by SpongeBob.
Yeah, he fucking tweeted that out too. That was incredible.
Johnny Greenwood's been on his bullshit lately.
As a champ.
I think Tom York even retweeted it too.
Yeah, Tom retweeted it as well. So confirmed, Johnny and Tom have both seen the shitposty YouTube video from the Radiohead subreddit.
Also,
we really made it.
I just want to say I'm on Tom York's Twitter right now because I want to see if he posted anything funny recently. And like his most recent tweet is fog. It's like lowercase f space uppercase O G. That's it. Tom York is
and then it's he tweeted fog, and it was a link to a Brexit story.
Folks, Tom York is back on his bullshit.
Also,
you heard it here.
Also, Tom York regularly retweets the tweet of God, which is a God parody account. But God is actually like an atheist, or like he's like an edgy guy. So
he's edgy. Watch out, folks. All right, this is more than enough discussion of Tom
York's
Twitter habits. This is a very Jackson tangent. Move on.
Okay, next news bit. MGMT, they released a new single called The Little Dark Age. The album of the same name is to be released in Q1 2018. And what is notable about this MGMT single is that they have gone full goth. This ain't no half goth. This is they are really going for the goddamn gothness. But
not just goth, but like goth pop.
Yes.
Which is like the pop element is important there, because like they haven't. I get people think that. Or like the normie view seems to be that Congratulations was very devoid of like pop sensibility, whereas as like the self-titled is just actually completely devoid of pop. But it's been a while since like that amount of pop has been in their music. And like I'm starting a tangent here. I think there's like 3 elements to MGMT that like makes great MGMT songs, and that's like the nerdy like throwback stuff, which now is kind of 80s-ish, but if you see them in interviews, they're kind of awkward as hell, but they know a lot about old music, and they're like, and then there's like the weirdness, which is the self-titled is basically just that weirdness, and that's why it's like impenetrable. So there's the weirdness, the old throwback stuff, and then like the actual pop stuff, which is this, and this is, people were comparing this, me included, to like Oracular, because this is the poppiest thing they've done since then. But like you have to balance out those 2 other elements with that element, so it's still, I guess, fun. But I think that this is like one of the best things they've released in a while. I stand Congratulations super hard, but I think this album could honestly like be their best, because I think that if they're going into it with the idea of, okay, we're gonna have fun on this record, we're gonna have actual pop songs, but we're still gonna keep like that spirit, then like I think this could be a really great record.
My only perspective on this new MGMT song is that I too have listened to The Cure before and really like that band. So I've never been. Yeah, it's listened to The Cure once, like the song.
It's The Cure meets like Animal Collective.
Yeah, I did actually get some I did get some serious Anko vibes from the song, which like I like because I've never been a big MGMT fan. I don't even think like. I wouldn't say like I think they have a great album that they've put out before, either Congratulations or Oracular, whichever one you kind of choose to stand the hardest. But I do think they have some really good songs, like some bona fide, obviously indie canon classics.
Yeah.
Kids, Electric Field, Time to Pretend are all like, you know, those are some of the most important songs in the canon. So I definitely respect their position. Even if I'm not big fans of them. But I do have to say that the song gets me a little bit excited to see what they're doing, because that 2013 album that they put out was sort of like super whatever and like genuinely forgettable, I think, even among like the hardcorest of MGMT fans. And they've been like touring off of it for a while, I think. Like they still do some live dates and stuff, but festivals. I'm interested to see if they just kind of fully rip on, like, I would say it's like Strawberry Jam era Anko. Is that what you guys heard too? Like,
I would say it's a little bit of that, yeah.
Yeah, definitely in the vocals, at least I got that. Like, if you're gonna rip something, that's not a bad sound to kind of take. Like Anko meets The Cure, so
exactly.
Cautiously optimistic. .jpg.
That's the thing. It's like it's one of those things where it's like listens to The Cure once is half of the take, but then the other half of it is, to be fair, The Cure is the best band. So like,
yeah,
it's like this is it's just like how that some of the songs on the LCD album were like, this is a New Order song, and New Order is the best band of all time, so this is good as hell.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to this. I think they played this live when I saw them at FYF this summer, which was an interesting set. And also, I would like to end my section by reminding everyone of the incredible tweet I saw like 2 days ago, which was that I just heard Time to Pretend by MGMT, and I felt weed that had been stored in my lungs since smoking out of a can in the 8th grade just all of a sudden got me high again. like there's just like a good like huge percentage of the white American population that just like there was a year of their life that involved a lot of smoking shitty weed and listening to MGMT in high school. Like we all had that phase, at least. As not all of us, but a good many of us did, and It was a little triggering to see that tweet down to like the details of smoking it out of a can. I was like, fuck that.
It's kind of like funny that they hate their Oracular era so much, because it seems to have inspired so much of like the like retro Coachella kind of like way that people dress up when they go to festivals now, and it's just really, like the entire mood of it.
Exactly. Like they became, and that's why like when I saw them, they do this thing when they play Kids. So they play it, and there's like a breakdown in the middle after like the second chorus where like slowly like the song works itself down from the jam, and people just stop playing their instruments and like as they come out of the mix, and then by one as they stop playing their instruments, they all like lie down on the floor until it's just like a synth note or something like that, and then the lead singer of the band's like, "What are you guys doing? You can't just sit around on the floor. You got to get up, guys. You got to get up." And then they like all get up, and then they eventually play the second half of it. But there's just like this like 3-minute long like detour that is intentionally meant to fuck over all of the momentum of their favorite of like their biggest hit while also playing it, which to me it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It was like, these guys are kind of dickheads, but they're also kind of funny. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing what this new album.
That kind of reminds me of like when I saw Alex G and they played. Is it no? It's not Horse. The like basically yell rap emo
Brick.
song off of Brick. Yeah, off of Rocket, and then like after it, while everyone was like deep in the mosh, they like played that instrumental track Horse, and Alex just like got off stood up and like walked over to the side of the stage where I was sitting at and like made a phone signal with his hand and just said "got a call," and then like went down behind or like next to me and just started walking around, disrupting the entire mosh, just making that phone signal and like looking really genuinely concerned, and they just got back up on stage, but it like entirely stopped everything. And just like that disruption of the mood is kind of, I admire
a similar sort of thing.
Yeah.
The bullshit from my Alex G concert is when they covered "You Got a Friend in Me" 3 times in a row.
They did that because Alex G broke a string, and so they had to improvise.
They did that with "Life in the High," Life on, or
yeah,
Life
they
is
play
a Highway.
"Life is a Highway" like on the. Man, they're on some wild shit. You should see them if you get the chance this year. That's a great show. That is.
It's like the closest thing in indie rock to a punk show. Like, it's not technically punk, but it has that same energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has that feeling.
Y'all seen? I posted this on Twitter yesterday, but the Vine of Alex G performing, and he's doing like that.
Oh my god!
He's like, he's like rocking like a baby, and then just fucking screams into the mic. He's got the baggiest fucking pants on, and just like a really shitty like.
Oh, that's normal for how he dresses.
I mean, true.
A lot of it is the Green Text Arrow Animal Collective video.
Yeah.
That top 5 for me. Top 5 like favorite YouTube videos of all time. Like that video is it's so perfect.
I think he said in interviews like, I hope people don't dress like the way I do at shows because they're like inspired or something, because I dress like a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyways,
on to the next news topic.
Next news story, and this one again, we have to take a position on this because number one, we support this artist with our full heart, and also we don't want to get cursed. We do not want to get cursed. But Lil B recently was supposed to play a set at the Rolling Loud Festival, but before his appearance, he was jumped by a Boogie with the Hoodie and P&B Rock backstage. And before we get into it, I just want to say, how does anyone named a Boogie with the Hoodie find success in the music industry? Like, I remember like my friend like who hosts a hip hop show at my old college. Like he would play the artist a couple times. Like he would mention him in like posts, and I'm like, a Boogie with the like, why?
It's a really bad name. So let me just lay out first before we get into this. We have to acknowledge that Lil B has said some just like outright awful things on Twitter recently, and is like mildly problematic to one degree or another, or at the very least just a big old dumbass. But like the thing about this incident is that like Lil B has been a dumbass recently, but is also just genuinely the nicest guy in the whole world, even though he's very misguided and wrong sometimes. And like violence is generally bad, and you shouldn't do it. And especially it's bad because like P&B Rock and Baby are also like way just like worse people than Lil B is too. Like P&B Rock has been accused of like fucking like a 14 or 15-year-old, and so like these dudes are just bad and they make bad music, and so it's very easy to just take a side and be like, yo, task force, defend Lil B at all costs. Really, the task force let Lil B down. It was a true tragedy to see Lil B being swarmed by all these dudes jumping. And also, the reason why they jumped him is especially funny, because Lil B, like a few weeks ago, I don't know when it was, but he was tweeting like, some of y'all dudes singing and putting the auto-tune is so fucking funny. And then he just tweeted like "Drownin'" in all caps, which is like a song by A Boogie or whatever. And he was just clowning on their music on Twitter. And then they like, we're gonna jump this guy for this. Like, what the hell?
I mean, what have we been saying for literal years? Protect Lil B at all costs. And you know, he was certainly let down here, but also like, this is just further proof that the entire 2017 freshman XXL class was a mistake and just should have never happened. Because like,
yeah.
Even now, the year is not over yet. You look at that group of artists, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, is there one like good apple in this entire bunch? Like, or are all of them just going to be canceled before the year ends? Like, this shit is not good whatsoever, folks.
Well, I don't want Ugly God to get canceled. I don't really listen to his music, but he seems like a nice enough guy. But he might, I don't know. But yeah, this is just like, we let Lil B down. But Lil B, he came out of it positive still, you know. And that's a little bit we were talking about. Like, yeah, he said some very questionable stuff recently, but like at the end of the day, he's a very positive person, and you cannot deny whatsoever his influence on hip hop in like the last decade or so. Like, the dude basically is the blueprint for, hey, this is how you be a rapper on the internet. Like, he set the model for how to do that shit. And you can talk to any rapper and they'll be like, yeah, Lil B is influential. Like, basically was, the forefather of cloud rap, working with Clams Casino when he was first getting his start. Kendrick has shouted out, Lil B. Danny Brown has shouted out Lil B. There's so many rappers that love and respect the bass god, and for this to happen to him is a damn shame. And also should mention, we just lost. Did we lose Jackson again? Or
no, I'm back.
Okay, we're all good. But anyways, this is a damn shame. And a Boogie with the Hoodie should just,
retire.
With that name alone, should just get the fuck out of the music industry.
He's gonna be canceled. Well, I say this optimistically when fucking XXX and whatever Kodak Black are still relevant artists. So maybe I'm fucking wrong, but I would hope that the hip hop community has enough sense to expunge Mr. Hoodie immediately for disrespecting the bass god.
It was pretty uniform. Because like the thing about P&B Rock and A Boogie is like their music. Like there's like one P&B Rock song I liked. And then besides, it's all just like really, really, really mediocre, and so everyone is. And like the thing is that like the hip hop community was like way better about this because it's a dude, and so obviously like when it's not violence against women, the misogyny is not there, and they're not going to be shitheads about it. And so everyone was like protect Lil B at all costs. And so it was really crazy how uniform across the board. Like everyone on Twitter last night was like, "What the fuck? Why would you ever hurt Lil B?" It's just baffling in a lot of ways.
So our next steps are to get the hashtag protect women at all costs trending, if that's what it takes for hip hop fans to pay attention.
Although making defending women into a meme probably isn't the best idea, because the whole respecting women thing just became like the worst.
No, let's get a positive movement to genuinely believe women trending on the internet as much as we respect the bass god. Let's get that happening.
Hell yeah, brother.
Say, and of course, and some last words before we get to our next story. To quote our beautiful bass god, "I hate bullies. Stop picking on me, you bitch." So, but our last news story is about Tom Delonge of Blink-182. He recently announced that he is raising money to build an electromagnetic vehicle to travel instantaneously through space, air, and water by engineering the fabric of space-time.
Sure.
Yeah. Go for it, brother.
Tom Delonge, man, I'm not a big Blink-182 guy. They got some good ass songs, can't deny it. They got some bops, but for the most part, Blink-182 is a mistake. But I fully support Tom Delonge being like a crazy alien conspiracy theorist. Like, that just owns.
He's a wild
so
dude.
Hard.
This brings up a good question of just which Blink-182 member has been the most washed, sort of. Tom DeLonge has gone into full conspiracy mode. Mark Hoppus is the founder of some center left political party now, and then Travis Barker is I've always made hip hop. I was never in the rock music industry. What are you talking about? So it's just for as fundamental as their early stuff is for my music taste, and I will never ever disown my hardcore Blink-182 fan. I was one of those I was definitely a deafener for Blink-182, being rap music, Kanye West. This is in 2005 or whatever the hell it is. I don't listen to Kanye West.
Rap is crap, am I right?
Rap is crap. Yeah, I listen to Blink-182, baby. But it's just there's certainly been a turnaround in my opinions there. Maybe it's time for all of the members of Blink-182 to go away for a very long time.
For a bit, yeah. It's really weird. There's usually one, when you have a band that's been around for that long, sometimes there will be oh, this one dude in the band is super weird now. But to have
Billy Corgan.
Yeah, but to have a thing where almost everyone who was in the band is weird in different ways is kind of cool. I kind of like that. It's every single one of them is still around in some way, still being really weird, and all of them are being weird in different ways. It's truly remarkable.
Tom DeLonge is basically rock Dan Aykroyd.
That's the perfect take to end that. That's
yeah.
All right, let's get into our what we've been listening to this past week, or really, since we did the last podcast. And since we talked about Alex G earlier, let's talk about Alex G again. I've been on a big Alex G binge this past week. Listened to DSU and Beach Music for the first time, because Rocket is like one of my favorite albums of the year. And so I was like, I have not checked out his back catalog that much. I need to dive in. And I was like, damn, this is some good shit, brother. This is some good ass shit.
I remember when DSU came out, just going off of, like, I had a bunch of people recommend it to me and sort of, like, put it off for a little bit. Just going off of his name and the album cover, I was like, oh, this is going to be, like, some kind of, like, mixtape, like a hip-hop project for sure. And then so I started listening to it, and I'm like, oh, I was wrong. This is not even close. And so, like, that's my first exposure to Alex G, which was a fun little tale.
His back catalog is fascinating because it kind of ebbs and flows with accessibility. And just like there are songs on earlier albums that almost sound more accessible than a lot of stuff on Beach Music, but I would say for the most part a lot of it is good.
Oh yeah,
I
was really enjoying it. It was really hitting the spot for like where I'm at in my life right now. It's like it really was hitting the spot, and
it's remarkably consistent unless you go like really early.
Yeah. Like DSU's basically like his first breakout, pretty much. Like that was the one that put him on the map. Because I think it was like his first one that was on like a label. It wasn't Domino, but it was like some like label from England, and that put him on the map. And then Domino signed him, and it's been up from there.
The rest is history.
Rest is history.
Yeah.
But
I have a fun fact, which is that I worked with the dude this summer who actually is a graduate of Delta State University, the DSU that is spoken of in title of this album, and he's like an Alex G fan. So shout out to that guy.
Hey, but yeah, I would say if you only listen to Rocket, definitely listen to some of the stuff in the back catalog because it's really good. It doesn't quite have the country influence that Rocket has. But there's some really good like indie rock tunes on here. Some like more like Modest Mouse type stuff.
Yeah,
although not
he was very like influenced by Modest Mouse early on. Like before DSU, I also really liked Trick and Rules.
I need to listen to Trick still, but DSU and Beach Music, fucking Beach Music has some really incredible stuff. Like Bright Boys, like that one fucking hit because I think I saw the YouTube video of him performing it with Michelle from Japanese Breakfast. And I was like, damn, this is a fucking good-ass song. And then, listened to it, and I was like, damn, this is a good-ass song. This gets me in my feelings. This makes me want to fall in love real quick. But, yeah, damn good. And then, unless anyone else have any more thoughts on parentheses, Sandy, Alex G, before I just briefly want to move on to the next thing, because I don't have much to say about my next album. But,
he a good boy.
He a good boy. And speaking of good boys, Arca... re-listened to his self-titled album from earlier this year. Still holds up pretty well. Still a teensy bit disappointing because like Dylan and I have discussed this in the chat multiple times, and I think maybe on the podcast. Like I probably said this on like whatever the last time I talked about this album. I probably said this, but I'm just gonna say it again because I don't give a fuck. But like Arca is he's just inches away from making like a really truly great album. He's so damn close. Because the best songs on this album are like some of the best like songs this year, easily. Like Anoche and Reverie and Def.io, or I'm probably saying that one wrong. But there's just some just great songs in here because his singing is just fantastic and the production is just it's so good. He's just one of the best producers like working today. But like the album, it has a little bit of those like those Arca things that kind of held back his previous work because there's still some like instrumental stuff in here that like works better as like ideas rather than like fully realized songs. But of course, even though some of those ideas like still work, like Whip is a fucking like crazy fantastic song. But there's some instrumental stuff in it that's like it's good, but like it kind of maybe it runs its course like pretty quickly. Like once you kind of figure out like this is what's happening, and you're like okay. Well, can we get some more singing? But we're gonna say.
I think that like he almost gets so wrapped up into the aesthetic and the atmosphere of each album that there's not enough fleshed out songs. When like the ones that are really fleshed out are really good, but there's a lot of just kind of atmospheric, not really filler, but just kind of ideas and just like ways to add that they don't really stand up by themselves, but they're still interesting.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just like they're still really interesting, but they just don't quite work as songs, or at least they kind of run their course pretty quickly. But I said this one before it came out, but I do think this time around, like whatever he does next, like that is going to be his great album. Like that's going to be the one that's like, okay, finally, what I've been waiting for. Because hopefully by that time he fully sort of breaks out as a singer and really does kind of dedicate an entire album to it. Because it's like, he's so close, he's so damn close. But Arca still one of my favorites of the year. Still some fantastic songs here. Fucking love it. Arca is my dad. I love him to death. But Jackson, what have you been listening to this week?
So to start things off, I have a personal announcement that I've been waiting to make on the podcast. I have to let everyone know that I'm super slimy and I'll fuck around and slime out Future. Because this week I have been listening to the new mixtape from acclaimed Atlanta rappers Young Thug and Mr. Future Hendrix. It's called Super Slimy, and it's really fucking good. Like I had a really really big like Young Thug like phase in 2015 where that was just like most of the rap that I listened to, and like also during the whole during the best run of Young Thug's career and the best run of Future's career when they were both at their peak, and it was like, oh man, that's awesome. And since then they've both dropped some really good stuff still, and some misses as well. Like I wasn't really a big fan of Beautiful Thugger Girls outside of a couple songs.
Whoa.
That's a take we can discuss perhaps at a later time.
What a terrible take. Yeah, we'll discuss it at the AOTY season, baby, because I'm coming dicks out.
The point I'm trying to make here is that it's not that I ever stopped loving Young Thug, but like in the past week listening to this tape, I'm like, oh, he's still like one of the 5 best rappers out there right now. Like he is so fucking good on this, and in a way where he's being really creative, being really risk taking. Like some of the vocal stuff he does on here is insane as always. Like the part where he goes into like a insane falsetto and he's like, this money turned me out.
Oh my god, yeah. But
like that, it's like what he sounds like. It's like almost like Wyclef Jean or like Andre 3000, just crazy stuff going on his vocals. And then like every song on here slaps. It's super super consistent. It's really really fun in a way that like I just needed from this project. I didn't want it to be like underwhelming and just like half-assed, and there's some parts of it that are like a little sloppy, or like they felt like they were thrown together pretty recently, but like as a whole this is just like thoroughly enjoyable rap music. It's good rap music.
Yeah. And so like
group home, Future sounds like he swallowed like an entire pack of lit cigarettes and then and it's incredible. It's so unbelievable.
I have like this year specifically, I have lost a lot of my interest in hip hop just sort of as a genre. Like, I understand that artists like like Milo and Open Mike Eagle like are putting out these like consciously well thought out projects, but like I really can't listen to hip hop unless it's just like this over exaggerated, over the top, just like filthy, grimy, fucking slimy shit. And so like for that reason, like Future and Young Thug are like 2 of the only hip hop artists that I like regularly listen to anymore, or will kind of like get excited when they put out a project. So when I heard about motherfucking Super Slimy, like literally out of nowhere, it's just like, yo, Future and Thug have a tape dropping tonight. I was into that. And I think like you said, I'm glad we agree on this. Thug like walks away with this tape for sure. He is like he is performing at peak Thug here, and just like almost on every song he has a line that's just like, all right, okay, sure. Like he's talking about feeding deers, or he doesn't eat chicken anymore. He's bored of chicken. He only likes shrimp. He only drinks Activist because he's on a diet. I think like one of the first couple songs starts with like, I got more chains than you got, or I got more bracelets than you got chains, bro. And I'm like, I honestly don't know what that means, but it is so fucking cool. Like, sure, you do that, Young Thug. Like, and then the thing about these projects too is that like, for as kind of like hype and as exciting as it is right now, I'm sort of like keeping it on repeat just because these kinds of projects have like a very strict expiration date on them, where it gets to the point where like these tricks will not be exciting anymore, and like because it is sort of like the same stuff that both of these artists always do, basically, just they're doing it together, so that's what's kind of new and exciting about it, more so than something like Evil, or like even like Barter 6 or Slime Season 3 or I'm Up. Like those mixtapes, like I love them when they come out. I listen to them a shit ton. I'm like, yo, that's such a good tape. I love Young Thug, I love Future. And then it's like within like 2 weeks I'm just like, I'm honestly probably never going to listen to that again. But right now, like this tape is doing some things. It's changing lives for sure.
I feel you on that. Although I must disagree. I listened to Barter 6 in its entirety literally yesterday. Still great.
Like so, like something like DS2 obviously will never expire. And then like I think the two albums that Future put out this year are both pretty good. And then like, you know, Beautiful Thugger Girls still goes for sure for me at least. And then I think like Slime Season 3 is like the one for Young Thug that's like every song on Slime Season 3 I think continues.
That one's really consistent. Yeah,
will never stop going.
Also, the future, Matty, you just don't need your take in this.
Yeah, like you gotta unplug your mic.
Literally,
like log off.
Anyone who's met you knows exactly your take on
okay,
Young
well,
Thug.
here's the thing.
Guys, I don't think Young Thug is very interesting. I just don't really know.
Hey. Literally in the middle of you guys talking, I was like, okay, they're gonna be at this for a little bit, so I just went to the bathroom while you guys in the middle of talking. So you suck on that. I don't know. I haven't listened. I'm not gonna say anything. Okay, you guys spoke for me. Okay?
Oh, I'm not even gonna pretend like I'm not gonna pretend
you guys
like
spoke for me on this.
Yeah, I'm not gonna pretend like this would be the album that changes your mind about Thug either. Like, no fucking chance.
I listened to this more than Matty, but less than you guys, and I rate basically all like Young Thug vocal ideas on the metric of the seal noises and Rai, and nothing really gets to that level, but this had that, not that much energy, but it had a solid energy throughout.
Yeah. Well, Jackson got dropped from the call again.
Oh damn!
Reminded me kind of What a Time to Be Alive, in terms of like,
okay, Jackson's back.
There's not a lot of room to breathe. They are like all bangers, but like also I wouldn't expect anything else.
Yeah, I would also like to point out now that I'm back on the thing. My Wi-Fi has been a little weird today, but "Killed Before," which is one of the two solo Young Thug songs on here, is one of the 2 or 3 best Young Thug songs this year, and it has this like really cool guitar beat on it, and it's really just crazy good. Like,
we need to just like give a moment of silence for Paytech Water, because that song is fucking unbelievable. Like,
with the
so
feature is
you've got Thug and Future like trading lines back and forth on this thing, and then you throw an Offset, and it's like, don't do it. Do not do that to me. I don't want to hear it right now.
All right. Yeah, super slimy. It's really good. And then the other album that I listened to this week. So I had the immense pleasure of finally seeing my father live in concert, Mr. Mark Kozlak, Mr. Sun Kil Moon, Mr. Goat. I saw him in concert in the city of Los Angeles. There was no opening act. It was a concert performed with this group called the Magic Orchestra, which is basically an orchestra that like specifically gets hired to like do work with other bands. And so, but it was just a 3-piece string section and a piano player who's conducting the string section, and as well as doing some backup vocals. And then it was a band of a guitarist, a bassist, and a drummer who was not Steve Shelley, unfortunately. It was a dude, but it was a dude who used to drum for Elliott Smith, like a really, really good drummer. And so it's just this full-ass band, and Mark wasn't playing guitar at all. He was just standing there in his beautiful suit, looking thick as hell, brother, standing up there, mic in the hand, and he sang for 2.5 hours straight and just like blew my brains out the back of my head. It was incredible. But the most amazing thing that he did was that he opened with a song called it's called The Wonder of Life Somehow Prevails, off of the album he did with Jimmy LaValle called Perils from the Sea.
Underrated fucking album right there.
Very underrated album, which is the album I listened to this week a lot. Because he opens this and he takes the song, which is a like, very patient, like indie-tronic kind of ballad, and they do it with the full band and just cranked it up to like 1 million. And I was like, this is incredible. And I was like, this must be this crazy thing that they do in their live shows. This is like this secret weapon where they take this song and they blow it out and it's awesome. But then like after he finished it, like Mark clearly was as surprised as we are how hard he went on that shit. He was like, when he declared that was like fucking U2 rattle and hum, man. Like U2 at the height of their powers. So if you want to imagine a Mark Kozelek song, but at like U2 levels of like euphoric release, it was pretty like incredible, and it made me listen to Perils from the Sea a lot this week because that album lyrically is really, really, really incredible. It's a collaboration.
Yeah, it's easily the most underrated thing Mark's ever done. Like, it's up there in my favorite, like, you know, where the stands around these parts. But Perils from the Sea is so underrated. It has, like, a bunch of my favorite Mark Kozelek songs.
There's so many. It's right before Benji, so it's right as he's starting to make the veer into his more long-winded songwriting, his more abstract songwriting. But there's also, like, a lot of really good kind of more focused songs. It's a good mix of kind of his older songwriting style, his newer songwriting style. A lot of these songs have very clear like topics. One of them is like a little conceptual, the What Happened to My Heart song, which is so good. So fucking good.
Yeah, that album is a definite reco.
It's really awesome. It's a collaboration with the dude named Jimmy LaValle. He's the guy behind the project My Album Leaf, or it's the album Leaf. And so it's like very kind of down-tempo, low-key synth kind of ballad type stuff. And it's really good, and it's very unique compared to what Mark usually sings over. And so if you're a fan of Mark's work and you want something that's a little different and very, very, very criminally underrated, I definitely recommend Perils from the Sea. There's some good shit on there.
He's also such a good performer. I'm bummed I had to miss him this year. I've like seen him every year for the past like 3 or 4 years. He always does the same thing, in Michigan. But I had to miss him, unfortunately, this year. He's like he is. That's why like I saw him. I had seen him live, and then when like the war on drugs stuff and like is he like a bigot saying all this stuff at his live shows? I'm kind of like, you sort of have to be like, yes, the things he says are shitty, but you sort of have to be in the room because it's like literally everything he says is very obvious that he doesn't mean like, and he like lets sort of the music speak for itself in its sort of sincerity and like, but taken out of context and like obviously no defense for the things he said about like female reporters and stuff, but it's just like he does not want. He's saying these things so that people will stop paying attention to him, and sort of he has all of the fans he needs or wants. He's an interesting man, that Mark Kozelek.
I'll leave you with one great anecdote, which was that like the crowd was really, really, really respectful. They clearly had heard all the cause rules of not recording the whole thing and not talking and stuff like that. So they were like, everyone was on their best behavior. Mark was in a really great mood. There were a couple dudes. There was like a group of people that was like right in front of me. They weren't loud, but they were just like just mildly more rambunctious than all of the other like middle-aged people that were just around hanging out. But like at one point, like between songs, like Mark kind of was like wandering over by where they were, and I think one of them like wooed or like said something to them, and then Mark points to this group of like 4 guys and 1 girl. He's like, one of these dudes has a girlfriend, and it was just the funniest shit in the whole world. Like, oh, he's hysterically funny, and then like he'll be making you crack the fuck up between songs, and then he'll go into Michaeline, and you'll be like, you can't just do this to me. You can't be on this roller coaster.
One of the last times I saw him was when he like premiered the song about Nick Cave's son, and it was just like, that was a heavy room to be in, my guy, at that time. I'll move on.
He also, by the way, he closed with Exodus. Live,
Unbelievable.
Which I could not believe how moving and incredible it was. It was truly one of the best songs I've ever heard performed in a live setting. Like, wow. Anyways, moving on. I talked a lot for
I was
listening to this week.
I was also at a pretty great show in the recent past few days. I fucking saw The Boys, the holders of the Album of the Year 2017, the one and only emo icons, brand new on their. I guess it's not super limited, but like very high profile tour behind Science Fiction. Possibly one of their last tours. There's some stuff going around at like the Chicago date. Oh, this is like a quick conspiracy theory territory here. At the Chicago date specifically, he said they would be back in about 18 months, which conspicuously lines up with the Pitchfork Music Festival. So take that as you will. But so brand new. This is not their final tour. It seems like from all the things that Jesse Lacey has said, but it's a very emotional and impactful tour because we know that the band sort of has an expiration date. They just put out what a lot of people consider to be their best album. Just an incredible album that sort of came out of nowhere and was just this big surprise. Like we didn't know if we were going to be getting new music from Brand New anytime soon, and we definitely I didn't think we would be getting music this good from Brand New ever again. So it's a great time to be a Brand New fan, and if you can go to this tour, if like the date in your city still has tickets available like for a reasonable price, you need to go to this tour if you're a Brand New fan because the Science Fiction songs played live are just incredible, especially how well they meld in with the stuff off of like Deja, Devil and God, because it's a pretty standard Brand New set list sort of for what they play. If you've seen them in the past, they just insert a couple of those Science Fiction songs. Like they do Can't Get It Out right before they do like Sick Transit and Spinlight
Mother
and Tommy
of
God.
God.
And it's just like that transition is like unbelievable. And the way to that a bunch of the heavier stuff like 451 and 137 like blends in with some of the Daisy songs. It's just like because those records do sound a little bit like pretty significantly different when you listen to them. They're leaning into like the hardcore, the pop punk stuff, and it would make it seems like it would make their live set kind of sound a little all over the place, but it's just like no, when Vince Accardi and Jesse Lacey are performing like at the peak of their power, it's just like unbelievable. One of the best shows I've ever seen. They've added Kevin Devine as like a member of their touring band, but if you can see Brand New, you got to do it. Fuck me up. All of the new stuff is so good. All of the old stuff is so great. They're doing weird, like, seated venues on this tour, but it's absolutely worth seeing them. Incredible show. I also, this week, came around on a record that sort of slipped under the radar for me, and I do think a lot of other people. The new Manchester Orchestra album, A Black Mile to the Surface, is genuinely one of the best capital R rock records I've heard this year, for sure. It's got a conceptual edge to it a little bit. It's sort of about... I'm blanking on the name right now. Like Andy Hall, I'm pretty sure, is the frontman of this band. It's about sort of him like becoming a father and dealing with sort of like anxiety. And Manchester Orchestra has always been one of those bands that have existed in the indie rock space that I've been aware of, but could never sort of like point out their style or like even a song by them. They've just sort of like had that place carved out. So this is my first real exposure to their music outside of, which actually does deserve a mention here, the Swiss Army Man soundtrack from last year, the best movie of 2016, probably my favorite movie of all time at this point now. They did the music for that, and surprisingly, a lot of the motifs from that soundtrack appear on this album, like the choral vocals and like weird sort of like talk singing mixed down low in there. But it's also just got some really great guitar riffs, some really great melodies on the choruses, and then like Lead, South Dakota is what one of the songs is named after. Like that's a definite standout. The chorus on that track is downright sinister, folks. It gives me the chills. But every song on here is honestly pretty great. Sort of all exploring like different ideas of just like this like Midwest Malaise type stuff. Like very old. Kind of reminds me of like the Jason Isbell. Was that who it was? No. Yeah, that record from earlier this year where it's just like, oh boy, being white and being old and making music, like maybe isn't so great. Life's tough, like not in like a life's tough way, but it's like shit's not good all around me. And how do I sort of project this onto people in my life? But great musically, wonderful album. I think a lot of people aren't giving it a fair enough shake. I think it's going to just continue rising through like my favorites of the year, and I don't know where it'll stop. But it's a good record, folks. It's a good album.
Oh yeah.
Ba-boom. Josiah, brother.
All right. I also have been listening to the music of my dad. Destroyer came out with a new record. Ken, you already know what it is. Been listening to this quite a bit in the small amount of time since it came out. Actually, I will confess I listened to the leak a little bit, and then I got like the CD from my radio station like a day before it came out, so had a little bit of extra time. But I really like this. I really like two things that Stephen Hayden said about it. One was that it's kind of most similar to Your Blues and like a very early Destroyer record because it's kind of minimal with like a mix of synths and acoustic guitars and also electric guitars. But and also he called it kind of danceable with a sense of dread, which is this also, like MGMT, is going on the trend of kind of ripping The Cure and New Order, but in a way that I like, because it's, yeah, and I guess maybe, I don't know if there's any kind of political undertones to that, and the fact that, like, that sound was big during, like, the Reagan era, but, like, I won't get into that. The point is, the album's good. I like it a lot. I particularly, from the non-singles, enjoyed Something in the World and Saw You at the Hospital. That's like one of the best Dan Behar ballads I've heard in a while.
I've been listening to this I almost put this on mine, so I just want to talk about it a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure.
I really like this album. I've listened to it like quite a bit. It's a good like walking around and just sort of vibing out to album. Like Destroyer albums are always sort of more about like mood than sort of substance. At least to me, it's just like when I listen to Destroyer, I feel a very specific way. Like I'm some just kind of like weird European man kind of wandering around slightly drunk. But yeah, so Saw You at the Hospital is fantastic. The closing track is also really good. I'm not going to try and pronounce it, but like the way he kind of croons on that. What I really like about this album compared to stuff like Poison Season and Rubies and Kaput is like, I think the synths are sort of way more prominent here, and maybe it's like because of the acoustic guitars, like the less emphasis on like electric, but it kind of reminds me of like Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark or stuff like Dean and Britta, just like that weird sound you were sort of talking about that's like, okay, these synths are like up front and these synths are leading the song more so than like Dan Behar's voices on a lot of Destroyer stuff is just like dudes talking, dudes going, you know what you're in for. But on this one, like they're a lot groovier than some of like the other Destroyer stuff is, and so it's a little disappointing to me that like the lyrics and the sort of stories on the songs aren't as upfront as they usually are. But also it rips. Like this album goes, folks, for sure. Yeah,
it's kind of like it's almost like one of the most fun sounding Destroyer albums, but that's kind of relatively speaking because there's also the kind of sardonic wit in his vocals and just like the thematic elements. But yeah,
I think it's like the lightest Destroyer album, and not in a bad way, like there's no substance to it or anything, but just like it's breezy, it's kind of fun. There's none of those like long reflective tracks that can be like sometimes a little like oppressive sort of, but
there's nothing like Suicide Demo for Kara Walkerell. I'm just like, oh, I'm fucking dead.
Yeah, there's no Bay of Pigs on this thing. Like the longest song is barely 5 minutes, so it is sort of a breeze. But if you like Destroy, I think like this won't be an album that, or maybe it will because of the difference in sound. But I think this one's a hashtag for the fans album.
I think it's also nice because it's just like it occupies a specific like for some artists that have like a real solid discography. Sometimes it's nice to be like, hey, this is something we haven't done before. It's good, and now you have this little flavor of the Destroyer discography that you can come to, and it's really enjoyable. Like it's like you said, it's like it's a New Order album almost, but like then you put Dan Behar, this poet Vancouverite, over a New Order, and then it's like, okay, of course that's gonna be the best album of all time. Just like, holy moly, it's really good. I really like the second song on there, In the Morning. That one really. And also, I've come to realize more and more that the hook, if you want to call it, on Sky's Gray, the I'm working on the new Oliver Twist, that shit will get caught in your head just forever. It's so great.
Don't get a guy started.
So great, yeah. And so I haven't like, I don't really know how this sits in my year yet because I haven't had a whole lot of time thinking about it, but I like it for sure.
All right, and then to wrap up what have you been listening to? I've been also listening to A Deeper Understanding by The War on Drugs. You already know what it is. Not just because it's probably my album. It is my album of the year as of now, but because I got this deluxe vinyl box set in the mail that I ordered, which is oof. It's in all seriousness one of the most satisfying like vinyl purchases I've made in a while. If you are above I like this album, if you're like I really like this album to I love this album, it is, I would say, an essential purchase, because let me just break down everything. It comes in the big box, which is very like classic looking kind of old style vinyl box set. You open it up, there's the album itself, which is a double LP on like clear green vinyl, which looks amazing. Then you also get a little 7-inch single of Holding On and I think Nothing to Find, which is also on green vinyl, clear green. And then you get the Record Store Day like 12-inch 45 of Thinking of a Place, which I like. I don't know. I like having that almost as much as I like having the album itself, because I just love having that separately. That's probably my favorite song on the album. And there's also a big old booklet and a nice little fold-out poster that comes with it. So, very good release. Liked it a lot.
Awesome.
All right, folks. We have made it to the promised land. We are now on our main topic, which we should have teased like way sooner in the podcast, but we're gonna tease it now because we aren't even teasing. We're just going straight in.
You know what the fuck is up.
We're doing we are doing a double feature album discussion, as we are discussing the latest albums from Saint Vincent and King Krule, two of the biggest indie artists working today. And we're gonna start off talking about Saint Vincent's MASSEDUCTION. And this one has been a very anticipated release. For me, a little brief history. Of course, St. Vincent, the sort of alias of Annie Clark, was a musician, played in Sufjan Stevens' band for Illinois, I think, during that tour. So sort of, was working class, kind of, working her way up. Eventually released her debut, Marry Me, back in 2007. Formed a partnership with John Congleton, and they made some incredible albums together with John Congleton as producer. The sort of great streak from Actor to Strange Mercy to the self-titled St. Vincent album. Super incredible releases, with the latter being sort of a breakthrough for St. Vincent, as that album, it won her a Grammy. She toured a bunch for it. Kind of got into the celebrity limelight during that time as she was dating Cara Delevingne. And we're now at MASSEDUCTION 3 years later, or 3 years since the self-titled release, and I've got some thoughts on it, but I feel like I want to start off, but I know some folks, they just you don't want to hear it, because I've been discussing it in the chat all week, and every single time there's always one person that's just like So you know what, we're gonna let some other takes come out first. So I'm gonna select someone. AJ.
Cool.
Let's talk. Let's talk.
Yeah, I know for a fact, pretty sure that I think out of all the members of the podcast, I'm the hottest on this album. I really do quite enjoy this album a bit. I haven't really thought about where it kind of falls in her category. I've just sort of been like listening to and enjoying this album, not really kind of stewing on it as much as it relates to her other stuff. But every St. Vincent album is sort of like her putting on a persona and is like a whole cohesive, I'm doing big air quotes here, art experience, rather than just like an album that comes out. Like there's sort of like, what does Annie look like while she's promoting this album, and what is kind of like the art and the rollout for it sort of look like. So much so that like it's sort of inescapable and definitely kind of plays into how the album, like how you come to the album as a listener. And it's all very planned out. It's not like, oh, like the marketing is ruining the album, whatever. It's very planned out on her part, because she is this kind of like cohesive artist with a vision. And so the MASSEDUCTION kind of rollout, I think, was purposefully divisive from the very beginning. Like there's a big old tush on the cover of this album. You gotta talk. It's very in your face, folks. Like you're not getting away from this, and it's colorful and it's kind of loud, and definitely the poppiest thing Annie's ever done. And I don't think that is necessarily bad. because here comes the take, and this is sort of, I think, the make or break thing for a lot of people on the album, is that she did work with noted evildoer Jack Antonoff. Produced, I think a fair bit of this album actually.
He co-produced the entire thing with Annie.
Yeah, and I mean worked very closely. When you say co-produced, that's a good. It was kind of a cohesive vision that the two of them sort of shared. They worked together to do this, and I think as with all of the stuff he touches, his influence is sort of unmistakable. You can hear it and go, "Fuck." I know this Bleachers looking motherfucker. I can imagine him going, what if we did this here? What if on Sugar Boy we put in the riff from Los Angeles in the back half of the bridge, and it's that's so cool, which actually does work very well. Sorry to kind of call it out, but when you listen to the new Lorde and the new Taylor Swift stuff, it's very obvious where you can tell his influence. I do think Mr. Antonoff has never kind of worked better than he does in this album, and it goes sort of hand in hand with. I was talking about earlier, the projected persona that Annie puts on for this album, which is very scorned, very angry, very queer, and very feminine. It's just very in-your-face, sexual relationship. We're going to talk about this drama, we're going to talk about drugs, and we're going to talk about these bright neon in-your-face colors that you can't escape, on Pills, which is, I hate to do it to him. Reminds me of some of the songs on Everything Now, in being that it's, an idea for a song that you, as the listener, need to sort of to come to terms with, rather than you are sort of enjoying this song on its own merits. So I get that sticks out for a lot of people as a sort of, bad note on this album. I do think it was a very strange choice for a single, but the way it plays in the album I think is very cool. But songs like Mass Seduction and Sugar Boy, I already gave a shout out to, Savior, Young Lover, are these big sort of breathless, fast, and in-your-face pop songs that I'm just that's good. Annie's voice has always been her strong suit, and it's all over the place on this album. To some good and to some bad. I think a lot more good than a lot bad on this album. And then the slower tracks are sort of, I think, the standard St. Vincent slow tracks that you're sort of getting the ballads like Happy Birthday Johnny. Dancing with a Ghost and Slow Disco play beautifully into each other. Every time I listen to this album, I'm just damn, she really did that. And then Smoking Section's a great closer, again, using her voice in really creative ways. So I do think that this is sort of a very carefully designed album, and that it's going to bounce off a lot of people just because of how sort of uncompromising it is, and a little bit of a far cry from her older stuff. I do think it obviously sounds the most like the 2014 album, and I don't think it's very far off from that sound, but it is, instead of ripping guitars and gritty solos, it's we're going full on pop with this thing, baby. And so I see what she was doing with it. I like it. I really dig this album. It's in the upper half of my favorites for the year. I've always been a big St. Vincent fan, and so seeing her kind of reach this point where it's so cohesive a vision and so kind of realized a persona that she's putting on for it is cool to see, and I'm definitely into it. But I know that it rubs a lot of people the wrong way, so I'm curious to hear what you guys don't like about this album.
Oh boy. Wait, Josiah, Josiah, yeah.
I'll go.
I'll save my takes for last, because
I think that I'm somewhere in between, and I think we should kind of go from positive to negative almost.
Yeah, I'm probably in the same place.
Okay, fine.
I think that I will concede that what AJ said about Jack Antonoff kind of working on this record is kind of right. I think that his very distinct sugary pop style can't I don't think it worked with Lorde. That's just, I'll get that out of the way. I think that it works better here, and I think that conceptually I was pretty okay with everything going into this record, except that I didn't really like the singles. And I think that my big problem with this is that I wanted to like this. I'm okay with Annie Clark doing basically an alt pop album, breaking not really into the mainstream, but as far into the mainstream as possible for her. That's cool. I think that if as far as an alt pop record goes, this production wise is pretty good, and writing wise is it's fine, but what kind of annoys me is that for a pop record, I, for the life of me, cannot remember almost any of the hooks on this album, except for Pills, and I don't like the hook on Pills. Like, for some reason, the singles are like some of my worst favorite or my least favorite songs on this. Like, I'm down with Sugar Boy. I like Savior, Fear the Future, and like really a lot of the latter half. But like something about the first half is just like, I want to like this, but for me, there's something off about it. And maybe that's the point conceptually.
I would say yes, is that it's sort of by design, I think, a confrontational album, especially when you like consider the sort of the like source material for a lot of it was like her breakup and sort of her big official coming out sort of is just like, this album is kind of the like, I'm here, I'm queer, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. And so I think like by design, purposefully, a lot of that will bounce off of some of her like established audience, and not based on anything like weird or obviously like whatever it has to do with that. But I just think that like I definitely see that this is the album she wanted to make, and she did the damn thing, and it doesn't really like, you know, if people are going to not like it, then that is sort of there. She knew there were going to be people that don't like it.
Yeah. And she kind of almost acknowledged that in one of those Instagram videos where it was like, people are either gonna like love this new image as with every album, or be cranky about missing the old Annie. And like, I'm kind of in between. Like, there's a lot of things I like about it, and I think that there's just like things in execution that I get a little hung up on.
Yeah. So my relationship with this is a little interesting because like, so I wasn't really like a big St. Vincent head before this album. Like, I'm not like, I've listened to Strange Mercy a bunch of times, and I've listened to the self-titled a couple times, and so like I am aware of St. Vincent, but like I feel like I was pretty unbiased going into this just because I didn't have like a strong emotional attachment either way. I wasn't like, no, they're ruining Annie. I wasn't like one of those kind of people, because like I was just like, oh, cool, like I'm interested to see where this new thing goes as someone who follows the St. Vincent project but wasn't particularly emotionally invested in it. And yeah, this album for me is, I would say, a mixed bag. I think for the most part, there are only a couple parts of this album where I'm like, absolutely no. Like I think this album is not like Everything Now, where there are like a number of really like objectionable things. Which don't get started, AJ. I'm not trying to bait you here, but like this is more
I'm
like
fine, baby.
Everything with this album is like, there's like one or two things where I'm like, I don't like this at all, and then a lot of it is just kind of like middle of the road for me, and there aren't really any like crazy big like blowing me away highlights, but it's mostly enjoyable. I like that she decided to make a pop album. I'm glad that she decided to make a pop album, and I honestly, I said this in the chat the other day, but Jack Antonoff isn't good, but he's also not bad. And at this point, after 2017, I just have no idea how I feel about him, and I cannot separate like music industry narratives and from him, and I don't know how I actually feel about him, and I'm just very confused. So I'm trying to just think about this album as an album instead of what it means, the future of Jack Antonoff in the music industry, which appears to be booming these days. But I like it. I like Melodrama a lot better than this, but I also think that Jack works better here than he does on Melodrama, because the stuff that really like enchants me about Melodrama is just that like Lorde is one of the most like capable, incredible young songwriters in the pop world. Like, she really is like the realest of real deals, and I didn't think I thought that her songwriting style and Jack's songwriting style doesn't really mesh together super well. But then I think that St. Vincent and Jack actually work pretty well together on this. Like, some of my favorite St. Vincent stuff is like the hook on Krule, like that kind of like poppy, and then incorporating that with kind of weirder stuff in, you know, like Krule has that incredibly infectious hook and it has those super noisy, crunchy guitars on it, and it's like kind of the contrast of having like a very poppy, ear-grabbing song that is also so left field and weird. And so I don't know, like in general, like this album, like I think that was a really good point, Josiah, saying like the hooks on this album are not strong enough for this to be Annie's big in-your-face pop album. Like I should be like humming all these songs, like oh boy, that's a knee slapper right there, that's a catchy tune, and like they're very enjoyable. When the couple of times I put on this album, I'm like this is fun, I like this, but it's just not like sticking with me, you know. It's we're out here on Reasonable Take Island, moderately enjoying this, but not getting too excited about it. It might make my year-end list, it might not. I'm not exactly sure. That's basically my take.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, okay.
Lay it on.
Okay. Just off the bat, let me just say, I'm not that into this album. I am very disappointed by this album. The singles leading up to it, obviously, I think like most people were not that into them, and I was very worried going into this album. New York came out, and I was like, oh, this is not good. Like, this is just like a really kind of mediocre piano ballad that like tries to have this like pastiche and like this sort of epicness to it, and it's like, no, the writing is just not good enough for me to be like, oh man, I really feel this song. It just seems like it's like, you know, it's trying to be like this sort of emotional ballad, and it's like, no, there's a personal touch that's just not here. So I don't believe this. Like, it just like songs like The Party off of Actor, like those songs fucking that song fucking hits me. Like that's a fucking great song, and it really just like grabs me emotionally. And New York just did not do that, and I was like, okay, well, it's a kind of a promo first single. We'll see how, you know, let's see how things develop. And then Los Angeles comes out, and you know there was some hype for it, and I was like, okay, you know, it seems like, you know, we're back to kind of normal Annie, and I was like, oh, this is not great. And I'm actually like right now like trying to remember the tune of the song, and I cannot. Like, I listened to this album like an hour before we did this podcast, and I still can't quite recall the tune of this song. It's like I'm trying to remember, because I literally just remembered it like before I was talking, but then I forgot it, and I'm trying to refine it again. But Los Angeles was like also like really like underwhelming, because it was like it had all these elements that I like about St. Vincent, because you got those crunchy guitars, you got those, you know, sort of the slick pop song sort of writing, but still kind of mixed in with the juxtaposition of the crunchiness. But it just it had all these elements, but they just weren't in the right order, and it was something was missing, and I was like, ugh, like I wonder what it is. And Pills kind of was the kind of like, oh, this is not great. This is just, oh boy. Like basically I want to say Jack Antonoff is only like, he's only a catchy songwriter when he's being fucking annoying. Like when his songs are fucking annoying, that's when he's catchy. Like Look What You Made Me Do is only catchy because it's so goddamn annoying. And like, ugh. But Pills was also like, just the hook was bad, but some of the stuff in the verses was pretty cool. Like I like some of the horns, and I like, you know, some of the, you know, you had the good crunchy guitar stuff, but it was just a mess of a song. But the entire album as a whole is just very disappointing, as it's just like, first and foremost, the songs, they aren't there for me. Like, just nothing about some of these songs are working. It just, you know, like I was actually like, it's one of those albums where I wasn't sure, like, do I like St. Vincent? Like, I listened, you know, to some of the stuff on the self-titled and, like, Strange Mercy, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I still love St. Vincent. Like, she's still great. Like, thank God. But there's just something on this album that just, the songs, they just don't grab me, because I think it's Annie going into, you know, this new territory. I mean, the last album, the self-titled, you know, she was kind of, you know, exploring pop music a bit more than her previous work. You know, was working more synthesizers into the mix. And it worked out really well, because, I mean, she had just come off of working with David Byrne, and so some of that, you know, the David Byrne residue was still with her, and it really worked. But it seems like some of that David Byrne, you know, sort of influence is still there, but just not in the right places where it was on the self-titled. Like, lyrically, AJ was discussing how on every album she's kind of playing a character, and on this album it's sort of like a sensitive dominatrix. Because there's a lot of songs, buddy. There's a lot of songs. There's a lot of songs about sex here and dominating in bed on this album.
Especially on Savior.
Oh yeah, Savior is basically all about that, like putting on costumes and like being like, oh, you know, I can't be your savior, you know, dominating you or whatever, like a nurse's outfit or all this shit. But Yeah, the weird thing is, like, I'm gonna get some shit for it because it's not the correct take, but I don't really know how else to, like, express this because it seems like there's a bit more nuance, but just it doesn't feel genuine to me. Like, when she's writing these songs about some of these topics, like on Mass Seduction, when she's like, you know, I can't turn off what turns me on, I just go, I can't.
I sort of get where you're going with, and like, kind of what I think that partly is that when you have songs on this album like Pills, which are like kind of surface level satire almost, it's hard to buy into the moments on the album that are more seemingly sincere for me.
Yeah, like Los Angeles comes like right after Happy Birthday Johnny. Like that's like a really rough transition going from like the sort of like radio rock track that, you know, is about, you know, how like, you know, how much of it like a, you know, dominating force I am, and then, you know, this really vulnerable piano track. And it seems like it can work to have that balance of like someone who has a very sensitive side but also, you know, is like, you know, a dominating personality. She tries to have both, and it can work, but it just doesn't work because the writing is not strong enough and the track listing is not strong enough. And let me just get more into Jack Antonoff. I think this album has fully sort of signified like what I dislike about Jack Antonoff, and it doesn't really have to do with like his own like actual like production or his writing, which is not great. But I think Andy Clark is a strong enough writer that sort of blocks out some of the really awful like Jack Antonoff stuff, because I think the worst parts of this album are like it's on Annie, like, and that's what I'm getting to is just like Jack Antonoff. His problem isn't like that he's a bad writer or he's a bad producer. He's a bad filter because he's someone that like, from what I can tell, is someone that is like, I fully support your vision. I'm with you 100% on what you want to do with the songs and with this album. And that kind of hurts it because that allows bad ideas to flow through. And that's why I wasn't a big fan of Lord's album, is that it just seemed like there's some good songs here, but there's also just like a lot of like really like poorly executed ideas that like with a different producer or a different filter could work better. And that's kind of my problem with this album, is that like there are some bad songs here that could have been avoided or could have been, you know, worked better with a different producer. Like, we should mention that John Congleton has a very like has a much smaller role in this album. He only does like additional production on like 3 tracks. Like, I think it's like I think it's Pills, Fear the Future, and Savior. Okay, yeah, and you can actually tell that like that Congleton worked on those tracks, but still, you know, and Congleton, and you know, Congleton was super integral to like the Saint Vincent sound. Like, Actor is like really works because like Marry Me is like kind of a cutesy album, you know. It's sort of it's kind of a cutesy album. Doesn't quite have the, you know, it has some of the elements that make like that would, you know, later show up on later St. Vincent albums, but there was still some stuff on there that was like kind of, you know, like you could tell that she worked with Sufjan, you know, on his tour, because there was still some of that sort of like singer-songwriting type stuff on them, and that kind of faded out a bit on Actor and Strange Mercy, where she really kind of immersed a bit more in rock music and really was sort of finding her own identity as an artist. And this album, you know, it's sort of her, you know, transitioning more into, you know, wanting to make more, like, really, like, going, like, you know, I kind of teased the pop stuff on the last album, but let me just go more full-on for it on this album. Like, there's so much more synthesizers, the guitar, there's not as much guitar work, and when it's there, it's not as great. Like, it's just the production is just kind of sterile throughout, you know. Like, there is some of that crunchiness that is sort of known for, you know, throughout her work, but it's just like, it's sort of like a recreation of the crunchiness. Like, it doesn't feel like genuine. It's like, oh, like you're just trying to do the crunchiness, but it just isn't the same. And I don't know, I'm a mess on this album.
I think one. So first of all, we've talked almost entirely too much about Jack Antonoff in the last calendar year, but that's not really our fault as much as it is him being everywhere. And I think really one of my bigger gripes with Jack Antonoff doesn't really have to do with him as much as it is, I think, especially when there is so much of him on things this year, I don't understand why artists feel the need to do albums that are like front to back Jack Antonoff produced. We worked this the whole way through, because the problem is that like this album can feel a little samey with the production. Like I think because he has such a distinct sound, and I think this kind of thing for melodrama too. It's like when you have someone who has that much of it, like, this is what I do, this is my sound, you shouldn't have the entire album produced by them, because it's gonna lead tracks to blend into each other, and you want to have a cohesive vision, but you also should be like bring in other people, like, especially for like a pop album, you know what I mean? Like for an album that's supposed to really grab people's ears, like Annie could have easily done like 7 tracks that were Jack Antonoff joints, and then brought in like some other cool, interesting pop producers to kind of give it more of a well-rounded feel to it. I think would have been a better way to like go about this, because I think Jack Antonoff has a lot of strengths that he brings to the record, but he has a lot of weaknesses as well. And I think when you have him for an entire album where it's like this is almost equally his vision as much as it is the artist's vision, then when you have that, it kind of like it can wear on you a little bit. And also, Matty, I would just like to point out that you are there's that meme where it's like the Dinkelberg face.
Yeah,
from
I know.
Parents,
and I don't want to be
Antonoff.
I know. I don't quite.
Antonoff.
I don't want to be that guy, because I feel like I was doing that with Lore, and I didn't want to be that way with this album, but it's just like I can't get over his influence on this thing. And again, my opinion is more evolved into, it's just more of, he's just a bad filter more than anything, because he's sort of with an artist 100%, which is sort of a, for an artist that's a pro, it's like, oh hey, this guy like fully believes in my vision and is, you know, helping me execute it. Isn't that awesome? And it's like, yeah, but like, he's not going to tell you that your ideas suck sometimes. Like, I just feel like he's just a giant yes man. Like, there's certain, like, I feel like Look What You Made Me Do is a pretty perfect example of that, of just like, there's so many times in that song where he should have said no. He should have said no. Let's not.
I feel like we can talk about the St. Vincent album without having to talk about how bad all of the new Taylor Swift stuff is, just because that's sort of like of course it was going to be, you know.
Okay.
Taylor Swift trying to rap, probably not good.
Okay, let me. Okay, yeah. But let me get back to Mass Seduction, and let me just get, like, as I mentioned, the songs, they just don't quite work, because again, it's Andy Clark trying to do these pop, you know, these more pop songs, but like, yeah, they're just not that catchy. And it's also, the album is just kind of, the pacing is kind of off, because you'll sort of have, you know, these sort of more, you know, rockier, like these really, you know, pop rock tracks, like radio rock basically, and then you have, you know, a piano ballad afterwards, and it's just like, like, the transitions are kind of rough. And even the more rockier songs, like, there's just a certain a sterilization to them that just doesn't work. Like, I was writing notes for this, and like, I think the last note I have is that Fear the Future sounds like a bad dubstep remix of a St. Vincent song.
So it's weird that Fear the Future is actually one of my least favorite tracks on this album, considering like kind of the takes that sort of surround it just being like one that sticks out and one that Congleton's influence is like the most apparent on. But I do think it's just like too big and too loud in comparison to like everything else that was sort of happening on it, and it definitely just kind of like sticks out as being like, where did this come from? And maybe like it's because it doesn't jive like the most, but I just find that sort of interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, it should be known that Annie Clark is the co-producer on this album, because like I don't want to.
Her influence is obvious.
The thing is, like, I go to blaming Jack Antonoff because I don't want to blame Annie, because it's like, I love St. Vincent and I love Annie's work, and I think she's just, you know, is such a great artist. But like, you know, I mean, most of the album, like most of my faults with this album, they're on her. It's like, yeah, she's just, the songwriting on this album, you know, it seems like, you know, she's in between a rock, is like a rock and a hard, what's the expression?
It's a rock and a hard place.
A rock and a hard place, where it seems like, you know, she's trying to do that transition from going from, like, you know, the St. Vincent sound, where she found a really nice balance of the pop stuff and, you know, what she was doing with David Byrne, and then what she was doing, you know, like, you know, Actor and Strange Mercy, just a really nice balance of like all these elements. But here it's like, okay, well, let's up the pop influence, and let's up the let's up a little bit of that David Byrne sort of satirical edge, and, you know, let's downgrade the Strange Mercy Actor stuff, but, you know, not too much, and just a bunch of combinations. It just doesn't work, as like musically, it's just kind of all over the place. But like nothing, you know, jives together, because you have these really rocky tracks, but the rocky tracks aren't that good, because it's like I've heard her do these like really rocky kind of poppy type songs, like Birth in Reverse kicks fucking ass and is better than like any track on this album, And then, of course, you get to the piano ballads, and you're like, they're not bad, but, like, the party exists. So, you know, you have all these things where it's just like you're comparing it to her previous work, and it's like, well, this is not bad, but, like, she did this. So I know she can do this sound, and she can do it fantastically, but it just isn't there. And, this album, it lacks a certain bite that pretty much like all of her previous work had, maybe except for Marry Me. But like the rock stuff on here doesn't have bite. The more piano ballads, they don't quite hit the emotional chord that they should. And like and then some of the more poppy stuff, like Sugar Boy is like, for me, Sugar Boy is the worst track that she has ever done. Like that song just fucking sucks.
Bad take. Keep that away from me.
It is so bad. It's so fucking annoying because you have that fucking like arpeggiated, you know, like synth line and you know, Sugar Boy.
I love it, baby. I love it.
It's just so.
Sugar Boy is one of the songs I don't mind.
It's so annoying. And then like Smoking Section is also just kind of a disappointing outro because it's like it has that, like I mentioned earlier, that Feel the Future is like a bad dubstep remix. Smoking Section also has a bit of that, like it's a bad, like it has like these weird electronic stuff that just feels like instantly dated. Like it's like I heard people doing stuff like this back in like, this is like stuff that like Kanye was doing on like Yeezus, and this just doesn't it gel. Ugh. I mean, there's not much more I can say. I mean, I forgot to mention. Oh yeah, there's one note I forgot to mention. You know, like we were talking a bit earlier about like some of the more. There's a lot of stuff about sex in this album. You know, she talks about fucking a little bit, but like
I've heard of it.
But lyrically, like, but lyrically, you know, reading some of this stuff, it just sounds like, you know, Annie Clark went to Google and typed in BDSM and just clicked on the first result and then just started writing songs about like what she was reading. Like it just feels like the sexy songs in here, they just don't quite like. They don't work because she just isn't like the dominating like force of personality on this album. But it's weird because it's like, but like on the last album she was like basically a cult leader and it fucking worked because it was like it came off as really convincing. But for whatever reason on this album it just doesn't, because the writing isn't as strong. But I have many thoughts and I don't know how to get them all together. But I'm just not a fan of this album. It's really disappointing, and I don't want to be disappointed because I love St. Vincent. But this album, man, it's a brick. She dropped a brick on us, or at least on me. She dropped a brick on me for this one.
In summation, we here at the Indieheads podcast think that Mass Seduction by St. Vincent is an album.
Yeah, it's
released in the year
album.
2017, and we have thoughts on it. And you just heard quite a bit of them.
Hang on, I do have. Wait, I forgot. I have one more note on here that I didn't know if I wanted to say it or not. It was the first thing I wrote, but
get it out quick, buddy.
Okay, this might be my currents of 2017. Like this has that same I get that same feeling listening to it.
And we're gonna leave it at that. All right.
There's no good commentary that comes after that point. Moving on.
All right, our second album, Jackson. I'll let you take this one because you've been on this album.
Boy, I am probably the biggest. Josiah's up there with me too. But,
I'm up there. I would say
I'm a real big stan for this album, despite not being like insanely crazy about his first album. But this is an album. It's called The Ooze, OOZ, and it is by King Krule, who is a small ginger British man. He released his debut album. He released an EP in 2011 when he was like 17, I think, was when that came out. Like he was really young. And then he in 2013 he put out 6 Feet Beneath the Moon, which was his major label debut. And he worked with, I forget the name of the producer that like worked on 6 Feet Beneath the Moon, but there was he basically got taken under the wing of a producer and kind of worked on that album. And then released it, and it was very, very well received. Like Easy Easy is a very popular indie song. Like that single was really great, and he had a unique voice and kind of style and sensibility and set of influences in the way that he sang. And so people were like, there were some people who were kind of out on it. They're like, I don't really fuck with this guy's voice or whatever, because and we'll talk about that a little bit, I'm sure. but a lot of people really liked it, and he kind of had a small cult following off that album. I remember Earl Sweatshirt said for like an entire year all he listened to was 6 Feet Beneath the Moon. And then King Krule, in the meantime, between 2013 and now, he did a lot of side projects. He had that Archie Marshall album, A New Place to Drown. It's a little more like kind of hip hop than what the earlier rockier King Krule stuff was, and kind of showing some of his other influences, allowing him to kind of experiment in other styles and things. And really, it was all really to prepare himself for this really, really expansive, towering thing that feels like his like grand statement of like, this is what King Krule is. Like, he's had the first album, his debut breakout, then he does these side projects where he tinkers on some of the nuts and bolts of the other kind of stuff he wants to bring in, and then he drops this bad boy on us, which is I think 19 tracks. It's an hour and 6 minutes, and it is something. Like, I've tried to describe this album to friends of mine that like don't really listen to King Krule, and the number of like genre titles I have to use to like fit in all the things they're incorporated makes it sound like I'm just like blabbering nonsense. Like, oh yeah, it's kind of post-punky and also very jazzy and kind of trip-hop-y, and like it just sounds like a. But it really, I mean, at least for me, it really works. Like, on this album, it's almost entirely, he has other people that worked on it, but it's like, he's doing all the production here for the most part. I'm already in the same vein where Matty compares everything to Currents that he doesn't like. Everything that I like, I inevitably at some point will compare it to Blonde. And this album feels very Blonde-like to me, in where it's a singular artist who has a very specific emotional and sonic vision, and then they are kind of playing like orchestrator, like moving all these parts into place. Like the way that Frank Ocean made Blonde, like all the collaborators in that album were all told everyone, like, I don't know what the album sounds like. Like, he just brings me in, has me work on something, and he's the one putting it all together. And so, like, it has a similar feel here, where, like, as King Krule kind of wanders in and out of these tracks, and he's singing these songs that often bleed into each other and have these overwhelming atmospheres and things, you can really feel how, I think in what, it might have been the Pitchfork review, they say, like, he has his hands on all of the knobs here. Like, he's really conducting this kind of atmosphere, and I love this album, like, front to back. Like, the opener, Biscuit Town, is a really great way to kind of, like, the whole first run of tracks on this album is really incredible. You have Biscuit Town, kind of this morose kind of wandering, almost like spoken word, kind of has like a hip-hop beat to it. And then right into like the Locomotive, which is so fucking like tortured, and it's a very nocturnal album. And I said when it came out, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to like stumble home drunk at like 1:30 in the morning after like making bad decisions, and then like listen to this album and just like feel it, because this album is basically about three things. It's about a breakup that he went through, it's about suffering from insomnia, and it's about writer's block. It's a lot of what this album is about not being able to write this album, feeling emotionally kind of stuck between places, and lying awake at night, not being able to sleep, taking sleeping pills, not being able to work, and just not being able to express the thing that he's trying to express, not being able to put pen to words what he's trying to say. Like, there's a line in Check One where he's talking about the girl that broke up with him, and she says, "You asked me what her name is, I found it hard to write." This whole idea of like, he's going through a deeply emotional experience and just is struggling artistically to convert it into art that feels true to the experiences that he's going through, and he's kind of going crazy. It's like, it reminds me a lot of if you've ever just been like up at 3 or 4 in the morning for just no good reason, and you just kind of feel like you're losing your mind a little bit, like in a very solitary way. It really captures that feeling. And I think this album can be a little long-winded at times. I think there are a couple of like some of the shorter, more abstract songs that I kind of find myself skipping every once and again, but like when this album is at its best, I think it is just incredible. And I think in terms of the overall kind of feel of it and the overall artistic idea behind it, I'm so in love with this album. Like, fucking Dumb Surfer, that hook has been caught in my head all fucking week. It's like the way that he delivers some of the more like the old school kind of punk stuff on here has almost like an Iggy Pop feel. It's like a really classic like throwback punk feel to it, and like the way that he delivers some of those, like on Half Man Half Shark and on Dumb Surfer, it feels like he's like spitting the lyrics at you in his like sneering British accent, and it's just so grimy and so like of the city and nocturnal, and I'm really entranced by this album, and it makes for really good late night listening, really good rainy day listening. Some good shit right here.
Yeah, the comparison you made to Blonde I've actually heard before, because one of my friends said like this album is basically Frank Ocean for sad white boys who think they're cool for not liking hip-hop, and I was like, that's kind of Frank Ocean though. But like,
yeah, I was about to say, like, sad white boys is a lot of Frank Ocean's demographic, myself included.
But like, I like 6 Feet Under the Moon. I think I almost like it conceptually more than in execution. I think they're like this interesting mix of like kind of like 60s 50s guitar pop with like jazz and like post-punk, and just like if you watch his like What's in My Bag video, that kind of is a helpful context for his influences, and like you can hear them both on 6 Feet Under the Moon and on here. And I think that on the Ooze he basically like takes all the ideas and the influences of that and expands on them in such a perfect way. I'm gonna make a brief comparison here actually to the new Blade Runner movie. I think that like it's that same thing of like all the ideas are there and like it's all there, but the execution is just so much better this time. And yeah, you talked about his voice a little bit. His voice is kind of an acquired taste, but it's very rooted in that kind of punk sound and is very like almost represents like the sound of teenage angst. Like another thing about the comparison to Blonde is that I think this album and also Blonde are kind of part of the first crop of like great albums coming out that have almost a distinctly millennial sound to them. Like it's this mixture of genres and interests that haven't really existed in past generations, and it's kind of like these are the first great like types of music where people are putting those ideas and sounds into fleshed out music, and it's really interesting.
It's kind of a thing where like it's the effect of the internet on music is something that I've like thought a lot about.
Yeah.
And like obviously like any new artist nowadays is gonna have that, but like especially King Krule and Frank Ocean as these kind of loner figures and also just incredible geniuses who are just able to, because they grew up with the internet, because like and they're able to just like pull from all these different directions and influences, and to make something that like would only make sense inside their head, but they're such a talented artist that they're able to somehow get it out into the world in a way that makes sense. And that's truly what makes these albums like super unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm the coolest on this album out of all of us. I've said before, like I definitely appreciated it the first time I listened to it, and I see that like the whole atmosphere, like when you're listening to this album, you are like in this album, and so it being like an hour and 10 minutes is definitely a negative for me, just being that like maybe I don't want to go to that place for that long. At all of this time, but like I definitely recognize all of the interesting things that are happening on here, and I think like even as you guys were sort of pointing out, like in the positives, there are moments that bleed together and like totally like whole songs just kind of get lost, and you're like, I don't really know what I'm listening to right now. And so for that reason, I'm not like over the moon about this project like a lot of people are, but I definitely I really like kind of the sound and like what's happening on the album, and songs that stick out are definite like songs that I would say I definitely appreciate, like Biscuit Town, Check One, and Visual. I think Half Man Half Shark 2 are like the moments so like when I'm listening to it, it's like, this is cool, I like what I'm doing. It's sort of an album you put on for like an atmosphere or an experience. Like I was writing earlier today, like listening to this album, and it's cool to just kind of like be in this world with this dude doing whatever the hell he is doing. But like when I look back and think on the album, it's really the songs that kind of like have their own personalities and their own rhythms that sort of stick out to me. I do like his vocal style for the most part. When he's mumble talking a little bit too much and it's like almost getting into trip hoppy hip hop stuff, that's sort of where I'm falling off. But like predictably, the louder kind of like rockier songs, jazz rocky sort of songs, are the ones that I definitely dig the most. I wouldn't say like I dislike this album, but I'm definitely kind of cool on it comparatively. And seeing it get that hot 9.0 from Pitchfork.com, I mean, it's a win for the genre. It's a win for the culture. But I don't know if this is one of my favorites of the year. I don't think so.
Matty, you want to get some takes on it?
Like I said, I feel like I need to spend more time with this album because I think it's much like Blonde. This album, it's very long and it's very dense. But
yeah,
it's very personal too. Yeah,
I would say it's subtly dense. Like Blonde is a very like at times a very minimal album, and that's kind of, but at the same time also just very dense with musical ideas and that sort of that like I think again Blonde we're gonna see a lot of comparisons like we're gonna see a lot of Blonde-esque albums come out over the next couple of years, and I feel like the Ooze is probably one of the first ones to come out and have the its own sort of distinct style, but still have that very much of sort of the I guess just the fearlessness that Blonde has of this is my vision completely, and I don't this is my own vision with all my influences and whatnot, but still in this really unique whole where there's not really a whole lot of albums that sound like this. Really, because the Ooze, again, he explores a lot of really different musical styles, but it's able to fit them all in like a really unique package. Which again, it is a little overlong. Could have been cut a little bit, but I do feel like with time, like because already this album, on my listens really did hook me. So I'm gonna probably dive back in over the next couple of weeks. But one song you guys have not mentioned, which I'm shocked, but I will be the one.
Was it? I think it might be
Puppy.
Slush Puppy.
You got to say
Slush Puppy.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I had literally just pulled up the damn Genius lyrics Slush Puppy because I was like, we need to briefly discuss the emotional fucking pain this man has endured upon me with this song. Because like, I talked a little bit about the concept of the album, but like specifically the title, he described the title, The Ooze, as like both the physical and metaphysical gunk that exists in us that we have to purge out of ourselves. So the shit, piss, snot, and cum, both physically and also like metaphysically, in terms of like just the emotional and like mental shit that just gets clogged up in you that you just have to like release out or else you like go insane. And that's kind of comes back to the whole writer's block thing, this idea of like having this thing is stewing in you, and the way that he deals with like emotional things. I'm sure like a lot of artists, the way that they process emotion is like, okay, I'm gonna go take this and then funnel it into my art. And when you can't do that, it's like having to throw up and not being able to. It's just stuck in there, making you feel worse and making you feel sick and that sort of thing. And so like I really, really love this. And the whole the refrain of nothing is working with me, when he's just letting his vocals go completely, just like not really trying to. The way his vocals are unique is that he doesn't try to restrain them at all. Like, he's not trying to sing in a way that is pretty and is in control. Like, if there's real emotion that's just coming through, he will wail it.
Yeah, it was mentioning that fearlessness of just letting yourself go to the art, because like pretty much in order to make this album, that's what he had to do. He had to eventually just let himself go to the art. And Slush Puppy is kind of one of the big moments of the album. Like it's kind of it's one of the like the big emotional tracks that sort of kind of leads into the next couple of songs, where eventually you have Sezek 1, which is more of a moody, slower track, and then Half Man Half Shark, which is like this fucking like kind of crazy punk song, and then Dumb Surfer, which is like a kind of a spooky track. Which is very. Perfect.
I really like, in terms of the more rockier songs in this one, I love Emergency Blimp. That one is really, really good. That's the one that it's a little less like kind of a little less high energy, it's a little more like straightforward post punk than some of the other ones. And I really like this one. This is the one that was basically all about it's all about like his struggle with insomnia, and it's talking about a doctor who's telling him take these in the dead of night, and then the chorus of the song is these pills just make me drool, and it's so catchy and fun, but it's this whole like really kind of harrowing and this whole experience that he's going through, and it's really rooted in like the city that he's from, and so there's this just kind of almost overwhelming atmosphere of it. Like the way that there was another really good piece on King Krule on The Ringer, I believe, that Micah Peters wrote, and one of the lines that really stuck out to me about it is it's like he says, what if you return home to your hometown, like the place that you're from, the place that's supposed to be, and you're going there to like have comfort and relax and recentered, but instead of feeling that, the concrete of the place that you're from just forms around your ankles and you feel stuck. And that's kind of like one of the emotional things of this album that like really gets me. It's this idea of like the atmosphere is dreamy and spooky and nocturnal, but it's also like kind of suffocating in some ways. Like there's some of these songs are super jazzy and like pleasant to listen to, but some of them are just like, some of the guitars are like tuned in strange ways where it's like, this is really pretty but also like unsettling in a way. And I really just like, it is very specific in terms of what it's trying to make you feel. And just sometimes with an album like this, some people are just gonna be like, I'm not trying to feel that right now, and I totally get that. So that's why it's like I've listened to this album a lot, but I've also like gone stretches where I don't listen to this album for a few days, because you really have to be in like a particular place and set state of mind, and even weather. Like when it's too hot, I can't listen to this album, like straight up. Like if it's too hot outside, I can't listen to this album, because I tried listening to it on like a sunny drive when I was home for the weekend, and it was just like, this is weird. I don't like the mix of sounds and what I'm visually seeing right now. But it's definitely gonna be one of those albums that, because it is so specific, that like I feel like 2 or 3 years from now, I'll just be in the exact mood of this album, and I'm gonna find myself coming back to it and just getting reamed by some of the lines on this album that like fucked me up real bad.
I want to speak briefly on maybe my favorite track on the album, which is Lonely Blue. When anytime King Krule in like any of his projects uses like the lyric or the track name Blue, it basically like it that, and it's usually like about a girl. Yes. Or it's just like basically subbed out for girl. But yeah, this track like is one of the more like throwback sounding ones. It's like starts out sounding like a 60s like guitar rock, well, like kind of like jazzy lounge song. Like the backing track on this actually kind of sounds like Bad Not Good on Heroin, but like, and then it just kind of like, yeah, it keeps going with that sound until like the third verse or so, where it gets more into like a heavier, not so much in the instrumentation, but like the lyrics and the way he's singing it gets very heavy and like post-punky, and he sounds just like so desolate. And the part like near the end where he's just like, I got high off butane, is so like all of that end part where he's just like just like pouring his soul into the music, I love so much.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's basically a '60s lounge band like having a drunken meltdown. Like this album, there's some very like really strong imagery throughout this album. Like there are images that pop into your head while listening to this, because because just what he's describing, and also just sort of like moments in my own life where I'm kind of having that similar feeling of like, Slush Puppy, just feeling, nothing is working with me, just feeling like in an empty hole. And there's certain parts of this album, like I had a recent episode like where I had like sleep paralysis. Like it was only one time, but like there are parts of this album where, again, it was just, I had that feeling of like where I was like when I had sleep paralysis, of just like I can feel myself and I cannot control myself. Like I'm just going through life, just going through it for the sake, and or just I am stuck in this body and I don't know what to do. And I'm just having meltdowns, like trying to figure out like what can I do to get out of this. Like, and sleep paralysis, by the way, on a slight off-topic note, sleep paralysis is fucking scary as shit, dude. God,
it's no fun at all.
It's not fun. But yeah, the song again. I need to dive into it more. But again, it is long. It's a long album. So like, if you're going to get into this album, you have to like take some time to really dedicate yourself to get into it. Which again,
Yeah.
But if you don't feel like, basically more, I think after the first or second listen, you can kind of decide if it is worth diving deeper into. And for me, like, it's definitely worth it. I just have to like find the time, pretty much.
The thing about like the length and the amount of kind of, you can call it filler, but like the just the pure amount of tracks on this is that like you have to be able to buy into the atmosphere and the mood, and if you can do that, it's like already for me been very rewarding, like digging deeper into this, and I think it will continue to be rewarding in that way.
Yeah. I also, if we're gonna talk about songs that really stand out for us on this one, I would like to mention the title track, "The Ooze," because that one is definitely like one of my favorites on the, and like that one is very like, it's the third to last track, but the Ooze and Midnight 01 are like kind of the emotional like climax of the album, where basically he's really like in the most explicit way like reflecting on the end of his relationship and reflecting on kind of wanting for it still, but also like being so broken by what happened and all of this stuff. And I think he really did something here that is truly like impressive, and whether it's going to be for everyone is a different thing, but I'm just happy to see, like, it's like one of those artists that's like when you hear them and then you're like, well, this is cool, this is like very different, and I like this, and like we say all the time when you hear like a new artist, like, oh, I'd like to see what they do after this, and like to have like 4 years later to have him really fucking just do something really incredible with the unique set of the unique toolbox of skills and the unique set of influences that he has, to see him really just like take it and just crank the dials up on it was like awesome for me, and I was very happy. And also the other great thing about this album was it reminded the internet, but mainly me, of the incredible part of the King Krule Nardwuar interview, in which at the very end of the video Nardwuar asks King Krule, why should we care about King Krule, and then in the most like slurred British accent you've ever heard, he's like, you don't gotta care about it, I don't care about a lot, if you like it, you like it, if it sounds good, it sounds good, man. And he's just like so charming and just like seems kind of like he's a little drunk all the time, but like probably isn't. It's just the way that he talks, and I really like what he did here, and I'm happy. I like this album a lot. It's one of my album of the year contenders for sure.
I would agree. It's at least top 3 for me at this current as it stands.
I have a thing that I've expressed to a couple people, but it's like I have this thing where I just have kind of a rotating group of album of the years, because like all of them are like incredible pieces of art that like just all of them keep unseating each other, and it keeps moving around, and I need to do some soul searching before I figure out which one of them is the true album of the year and which one of them are merely cons. But yeah, like this is in the conversation for sure. It's on my short list as far as like 4 albums or so.
Also, I should mention that I think in like the Pitchfork piece, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. He did mention that this album, or at least he was really influenced by Dean Blunt. I just want to.
I was gonna say this is like that. This is like that fucking whatever. This makes me proud to be British. That's how this album is.
You know what this album is? This album is like Dean Blunt, but like if it was good. And so, like, for me, that just really...
Jackson, you're fired from the Indieheads podcast?
I liked Redeemer. This was merely a goof. I actually liked Redeemer that one time.
I saw the meme and he had to go for it.
Jackson, you ignorant slut.
I'm gonna fucking... I will fight a man for his disrespect of Dean Blunt. But for real, though, like, this album, like I would actually, if you really like this, like, if you want kind of a more, like, condensed version of some of the more, like stuff like Lonely Blue, the sort of, like, really hazy, sort of, you know... empty, like emotionally empty stuff, I would highly recommend The Narcissist 2 by Dean Blunt. Like it like really similar vibes, and also sort of, but also like artistically sort of with the grand statement, sort of also like black metal of like, this is my vision, and I don't care how messy it comes off as. Like, this is my vision. This is how I see my work. Ba-boom. This is how I'm doing it. Like, just all of this, all of these influences coming together into one unique whole. And yeah, I just want an excuse to recommend Dean Blunt to people. I feel like now is a good time. Like, if you like the Ooze, you will like black metal or the Narcissist
That was like one of the first times on the podcast you brought up Dean Blunt, and it was like pretty pertinent to the conversation and actually like worth talking about.
Yeah, so it might be the only time actually.
Fuck it, honestly, might.
Fuck you. This is my podcast.
We josh you because we love you, my dear Matty.
I try to put the people on Dean Blunt. I try. I don't have the same reach that Jeremiah has when it comes to fucking motherfucking psychopop. Like, I want to be a psychopop level album. But
Japanese Breakfast is now a sensation, though, and Dean Blunt is a weird, sad British man who looks kind of like Vince Staples and Amir Vaughn.
Jeremiah and I have never had more clout. Like, it's undeniable, folks. We're out here.
Dean Blunt is my favorite supporting cast member on The Wire.
I hate you guys. Any final thoughts on the Ooze? I think we kind of wrapped it up pretty nicely.
Yeah, it's good, brother.
Shouts out to the Always Sunny in Philadelphia theme song.
Oh yeah,
that was fucking awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Which is on this album, by the way.
Yeah, that.
Yeah,
I was like playing
really
like the first time I listened to it, I was like playing like no shame. I was playing Black Ops Zombies, and I think they actually kind of know each other kind of well. But like I was like, and then all of a sudden, you hear the theme song, and you're like, wait, am I listening? Is this still the Ooze? Like, did the track list fuck up? And I was like, oh, it still is. Okay.
Yeah,
that's like for months, like while he had like writer's block, like that's all he watched. Like, he just lay in bed and watched It's Always Sunny.
It's near the end too, so it's like just when you're kind of like not really phasing out, but you're just wrapping up. You're just like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's such a strange little outerlude.
It's kind of like the way that he like the whole album has a sort of feel where like he's just like he has an artistic vision, but he's also filling in all the cracks with just these like kind of like vignettes from his life in a way that like in the same way that like there's the Action Bronson album from this year was really cool how it did this, where like the entire album would have these little not like skits but just felt like almost like found recordings from his life that were supposed to like kind of give you a picture of the life that he was living. And Action Bronson is living a very different life from King Krule. It's a lot less sad, and there's a lot more like luxury foods and jumping off of yachts and things like that, but like it's the same sort of technique where you're like using these little like this very specific imagery and very specific kind of things that you're throwing into the edges of this thing to really give it a very personal, very specific idea of here is where I am, this is what I'm feeling. And that's one of the things that makes me really like this, because I like the art that is like that. So yeah, King Krule, the Ooze, it's good, brother.
You got to agree, smoking big old doinks in Amish.
Oof.
Unbelievable.
Hey, I'm smoking big doinks in London. That was horrible. That's the worst thing I've ever done.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up our podcast. Tune in. Actually, we will have this will be one of 2 podcasts going up in a very pretty much
in
soon,
the near future.
Basically tonight.
I think the second half will go a little later. I think we're going to release it later in the week because it may or may not correspond with a holiday that's coming up this week, folks.
Yes, so we will have another podcast. Not quite an official podcast. It'll be like a little late night. It's sort of an in between of a late night and a normal episode, but it's
gonna be content.
It's fun. If you follow our Twitter, you already kind of know what we're doing. So we'll have a little Halloween special for you guys before we wrap up the month. So hopefully you guys enjoy this podcast, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.